Wheatley, and welcome to episode 183 of the Wheatley podcast. Thank you very much for joining us wherever you are doing so. A big thank you to Melissa for coming on last week. I'm very nervous about Melissa because I was thinking I'm really out of my comfort zone on this one, but thankfully, as we spoke about in the episode, Melissa has a really good way of breaking down sociology and talking about mental health amongst kids and teens in Ireland and what has been affecting them. I was kind of worried that I was going to get a thesis and be kind of just really not be able to ask any questions, but Melissa was great and we really appreciate her coming on. You can support us in the usual place, link in the description. And let's get into this week's guest. She is a composer and a musician, and her name is Lou McMahon. How are you doing, Lou?
Not too bad. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you very much on this lovely, on this Saturday afternoon. I wanted to just ask you before we get into the first question and the second question and that I've already sent you. Unfortunately, Ireland lost an icon over the last week, and I really thought I should mention Sinead O'Connor. I'm going to do a full episode on her next week, just as a kind of a little tribute. What did she mean to you as a musician yourself?
As a musician, as a singer, as a woman, she has influenced me, I would say, pretty much all of my life, from when I was born up until even now. She, for me, in my opinion, has had one of the most beautiful voices of all time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for me, I don't think anybody has a better voice than Sinead O'Connor. I also love Kate Bush, and I would probably put them, on the same level in terms of voice and ability and talent and things like that. But yeah, she was incredible. And what I loved about it was that I was thinking about her voice, and I was thinking about this bel canto style of singing that she trained in, and Christy Dignam actually happened to train in it as well, and they did it at the Frank Merriman School. And that whole style is about throwing your voice, and she really did that, but it didn't sound operatic, and not for Christy Dignam either, which is thought is kind of unusual. And then I got to thinking, what kind of language would I use to describe her voice?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, it wouldn't be flowery language, it would be words like grit, soul, street, woman, femininity, but also with a level of masculinity to it. There's a scream in it. I saw on the BBC said that she sings from a whisper to a scream, which I thought was very accurate, and it's just incredible. I find her phrasing to be really unique. I don't think anybody places words in the story quite like her. She just was such an individual. She had her own signature sound and style and way of being, and I think she threw her voice, she threw her performance, and she threw her opinions at the world. And I think she was always right and misunderstood. And it took everyone years to catch up with her ideas.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, in that process and in that distance, she got a bit battered, emotionally. And I think even though there may have been underlying mental health issues, none of that helped her. All of the opposition she took, the scrutiny, the lies that came up in the media about her, and just so many things just rode against her and chipped away at her, I think, and eventually got her, and we never got her back.
Mm-hmm.
I always felt that in many ways she was terminally ill, with mental health.
Yeah, I agree. And I listened back to an episode I did back last year, last August, and I had a guitarist called Dave Randall on, who I knew as the Faithless guitarist, But looking into his discography, then he had played on a couple of her albums. So I wanted to ask him about her, and he's quite political, and we talked obviously about the music first, and then we talked about her opinions and her beliefs and how, like you said, she threw them at the world. But exactly as you just said there, she was vindicated in everything that she said. And it may have taken a while, and she had to put up with all the crap that was thrown back at her then. But along the way, these things were ticked off as something that she had said and she had pointed out, and nobody kind of listened to her for whatever reason. So, yeah, we definitely lost a true legend, like it has to be said. And yeah,
Yeah.
rest in peace to Sinead, you
Rest in
know.
peace. Oh, and
Yeah.
what I really loved about her as well, that even with all the defiance and everything, she stood by the power of her own convictions.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that she said, she never backed off on when nobody would listen. You know what happened at Madison Square Gardens when she ripped up the picture of the Pope, or it was after she had done that, actually,
Mm-hmm.
was it? And she was performing, and half the crowd was booing her, and half the crowd was trying to outdo the crowd who were booing, and it was just a level of noise, a level of decibel that just you could not sing over or perform over. And she ripped the plugs from her ears, the
Mm-hmm.
in-ear monitors, threw them on the ground. She walked up to the mic, this tiny little woman, and she preached
Mm-hmm.
with throwing it in that bel canto way about racism,
Yeah.
about the color of our skin, at them, back at them, this small woman. And then she walked off the stage, and I just thought, wow, that's so powerful, and it's so brave, you know?
Yeah, it really is. That's actually, if people haven't seen that clip, it's one of the great clips in musical history. Really, how someone can be
Yeah.
stand there staring down at an audience and you know, preaching those lyrics out at them. It's incredible. Um, so listen, let's talk about yourself, Lou. We always begin at the beginning. Can you give us a short history of your upbringing, please?
My upbringing, okay. Well, I'm from 6 Mile Bridge, which is in County Clare. I grew up there. Um, I have two other siblings, a sister and a brother. They're both older than me. One 8 years, one 7 years. I was the youngest, the baby. And my mom was a postwoman, and my father was a labourer, and he did a bit of singing. And yeah, was a normal enough upbringing,
It's all right.
same. Yeah, but I was fortunate that I grew up in a village that was very musical,
Okay.
and I think before we rolled the recording, we were talking about how you wondered how I perform with so much confidence versus maybe how you feel
Mm.
that you perform yourself, that you don't feel very confident. And I would say I'm not confident at all. But I would say because I grew up in a village that was so musical and I was surrounded by it, and I did it when I was 5 years old, all the way up along, including cultural exchanges. I performed for two Irish presidents in Nora. I performed for the Queen of Denmark in a stadium in Copenhagen when I was 13, solo, so singing Irish songs, Irish folk songs. And I just have that experience behind me.
Yeah.
I also remember having to sing for my confirmation off the altar, and my whole body shook and
Mm.
my voice shook, and I stopped singing. I was not able to. And I just stood there and cried from just pure nerves. And this came over me very out of the blue, because the confirmation that would have come sort of, I would have been performing at this point and I wouldn't have been having problems with it. So there are moments where I cannot,
Mm.
and I still have those. It must be just something to do. I just felt so overwhelmed, and that still happens to me.
Right, yeah, because and we'll definitely get more into this kind of conversation about that kind of performance and performance anxiety as well. But I want to ask you as well. We ask everyone this. When did you first become aware of mental health?
Not really. When I was growing up, like in school, you would have personal development education.
Mhm.
I would say it was briefly scraped over then, but my awareness of mental health came with my own curiosity about it. And actually, what mental health is to me is positive health.
Mhm.
Um, it's being able to manage your own problems and your own life and your own happiness, love. It's about positivity. That's what mental health is to me. Mental health doesn't really mean sickness to me. I think it's a management and it's a life skill. And I think then there's mental illness,
Yeah.
which is a different thing. Um, and I think to have good mental health approaches to mental health yourself in your own personal life, it's like maintaining your body.
Mhm.
It's going to the gym. We have in our brains neurotransmitters that deliver all these messages around our body that are chemicals, dopamine and serotonin and oxytocin and adrenaline, whatever. And all of these chemicals can be very easily managed by exercising, by practicing positive thinking, by doing things like that. And I think that's what mental health is for me. It's a practice in being mentally healthy.
Yeah, and we've spoken to other guests about that. There is obviously that separation which people maybe don't define, that mental health and then mental illness are separate things. And I think you're right. Like with mental health, it's about maintaining it and working on it, and not like allowing it to creep up on you, because it can very easily do that. And I think you're right. I would be in the same boat as you with regards to training, and like music, and seeking out the things that do make you happy, and that's very important. And that separation of also the fact that there's good mental health and there's bad mental health, and it's more complicated than just the idea of mental health. But it is important, and we've spoken about that idea of being in schools and it being taught more than it was to me, and by the sounds of it was to you.
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
it's
I think it most certainly should be the awareness of what it is and mental illness and all these various illnesses that people can suffer from and things like that. People should be aware of it. It should be taught. It should be taught in schools, definitely,
absolutely.
and practices in positive mental health as well, as in stop, breathe.
Mhm.
You're feeling overwhelmed. It's okay.
Yeah.
Learn how to stop, slow things down, breathe in and out deeply for a few minutes, and then return to what you're doing. I mean, it's very simple practices like that can relieve things like anxiety,
Mhm.
overwhelm, and those kinds of mental illnesses and things like that are actually manageable.
Yeah, I agree. So tell me about this then. So why is 6 Mile Bridge such a musical place?
I honestly don't know because it's more of a GAA
Mm.
town almost. And actually, it was really musical when I was growing up. I'm not sure if it is now.
Uh, when
Um,
you, when you were growing up, then was it like how did you like? I know you said your dad was obviously he sang a bit, but like when did you start playing instruments? When did you come in contact with like piano, guitar?
that was actually my brother had a piano.
Okay.
My brother went to the Yamaha school actually in Limerick. He went, not here. There wasn't those kind of practices
Mm.
here in the bridge, really. There wasn't music education. But what there was a community um, and people within the community who set up youth groups and community games and groups and ballad groups and stuff for Scorn and Og and things like that. So it wasn't a training thing, but rather that there must have been something in the water because everyone could sing, you know, and in that we were like, as groups, as ballet groups, we entered, our youth club entered the tops of the towns. That was a national competition. I don't know if you remember it.
I do,
Angus
yeah.
McMahon used to present it, and I think at one point we won it, you know.
Oh,
But we were all kids, and we were up against, you know, professionals almost. So there was just a lot of talent here for dancing and singing and things like that.
um,
Yeah.
who were like? I always ask this kind of question for people, musicians that I have on, but who are your first kind of inspirations, your musical inspirations?
My very first, my uncle gave me tapes. One was Bob Dylan's album Desire.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved him immediately as a poet, as a songwriter, his lyrics. He gave me also Donovan. My father gave me Whitney Houston's tapes. And I developed, somehow I found Tina Turner myself. I found Ike and Tina Turner.
Yeah.
And I obsessed about them for most of my youth. I was completely obsessed. I was so obsessed that my brother bought me tickets to see her in the RDS. And I got in with my friend Laura. He gave me 2 tickets, so I'd bring one person with me. And she was only about 15 or something. And the 2 of us were in there. We were the first in the gate, and we were right up the front. And I mean, I could see the veins in her legs. I was that close to her. It was just phenomenal. And she was in her 60s, I'd say. And she ran one length of the stage to the other and did all that energetic dancing, you know, to Proud Mary and all those hits that she would have did when she was much, much younger. And the muscles in her legs, and just, I've never seen a woman so fit. She was like an animal, like a panther or something, you know, like just, it was just incredible. I'm so glad I got to see that in my life.
That what's great. It's always thrilling to see something like that live as well, especially if you've been into the act for a certain period of time. I love asking these questions because I try and connect the dots in my head from like Dylan and Donovan and Tina Turner to what I've heard of yours.
But it doesn't make sense, right?
The funny thing is though, Lou, right? So the first thing I heard you do is the first piece I heard was the Nora Ephron piece, and I wanted to ask you about that in a second, but just to kind of develop on from it. So I heard that piece and I thought it was amazing, you know, and what I liked about it was the calmness that I felt whilst listening to it through my own personal anxieties. But then I heard like Pockets of Change, for instance, and that now that you say Dylan and Donovan, you can kind of see something there, you know, like a kind of connection through folk music and things like that. But I love kind of seeing those kind of developments in people's writing. And sure, while I've brought it up, why Nora Ephron first of all, and then we'll get into the piece.
Okay. I have always liked her romantic comedies. It's very simple. It's as simple as that. I loved Sleepless in Seattle. When Harry Met Sally, I find her humor to be so New York. You know, it's like she's so full of attitude, and she really doesn't give a shit.
Yeah, and it's great.
And I just really, really enjoyed that. And I love also her approach to romance. It's very simplistic, and it's also gritty. I think I like gritty things.
Yeah.
It's not fluffy, and you know, it's just so simple, and it's witty.
Yeah, I think When Harry Met Sally especially is just brilliant film. But let's talk about so when you're writing something like that or composing something like that, what's the like process of your of your writing? Is it organic? Is it I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write something now? What way does it work for you?
Oh my God, it's a brilliant question, and it's actually something I'm really trying to figure out. Because I'm genre fluid. I write whatever. I always wrote folk songs, and I think, like you said, that makes sense. I used to listen to Bob Dylan. I love Leonard Cohen. I love PJ Harvey. I love Joni Mitchell. I used to listen to all those folk stars. The folk stuff makes sense. And also that when I was very young, I started to work with Terry Woods, who's like, he was with Gay and Terry Woods and would have been a big name on the folk scene in Ireland. And then he's in the Pogues, obviously, which are also Irish folk punk sort of thing. So a lot of influence on Pockets of Change, A River, those songs. Actually, a lot of it came from Terry too, who would have played on it. So he brought a real folk element to me. I also was listening to bands. I was listening to Radiohead.
Yeah, I love it.
I think you can hear that a bit at times. You know, I listen to everything. I listen to classical music. I listen to jazz. I listen to rock, progressive rock. I love, like Muse. And I think somewhere along the line of writing folk songs and just I don't know, I started to branch off. I listened to a lot of minimalist music. I listened to Philip Glass. I listened to Nils Fram. I listened to Ludovico Einaudi. And then I listened to metal. And I listened to terrible metal, you know, like the real pop, metal and things. And I listen to country and I listen to bluegrass. I listen to everything. I can find something in every genre that I love. And that's why it's a great question, because somehow along the way over the past couple of years, I just started to change. I felt a change in me musically. And actually, I pushed the world out because I had lost something for a long time, and it affected my mental health. It affected, you know, it gave me problems. I couldn't write. My lyrics were, everything that came out of me was deeply rooted in emotions, and my emotions were really rowing against me.
Yeah.
And it was, a lot of the lyrics were angry, they were anxious, they weren't lovely and poetic. They weren't anything that I used to be able to write. And I don't feel I have returned to being able to write the way I used to write lyrics. I feel like, so I kind of started going in different directions, trying to discover myself, rediscover myself. And I started doing instrumental more and sort of pushing my emotions out that way, because the lyrics were a bit too traumatizing for me. I've been listening to a lot of calm music. I love Olaf Arnolds. I love Hani Rani. I love the minimalist piano music. And I had, this piano is a Roland RD 600, and it belonged to Pat Fitzpatrick, who almost gave it to me. Yeah, he gave it to me for really cheap when I was about 20. And when he was giving it to me, sorry, I don't know if you know Pat. Pat was in Aslan, and he was also in the RT orchestras and things like that. He toured with Colin Wilkinson, and he was just a sought after session player and an additional member of Aslan. And he had passed away a few years ago. And on the morning that he passed away, I don't know if you believe in supernatural things. I don't really myself.
I haven't had any experiences of it.
But I was living in a 2-story apartment, and I had the piano, the RD 600. I had it upstairs on the bed, and I was downstairs. The next minute I heard this big massive bang, and I thought, Jesus, what is that? I went upstairs and the piano was on the ground, and I thought, whoa, that's really weird. within a half an hour, I heard that Pat had died that
Oh.
morning. And I just thought, that is very strange. Anyway, I have from sort of then, I wanted to use it.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to use it for something. And just a mood took me. There one evening, I did not sit down to write an album. I was sitting up at my desk doing what I do, editing audio or whatever I was doing. And it just an emotions, like a sea of emotion came over me. And I have an anxiety disorder. And a lot of the time it manifests in my stomach. And I was in pain. It's not like a stabbing pain. It's like a dance.
Okay.
It is like a ballroom full of dancers going at it in my stomach, and it makes me feel disconnected from myself and things, and it's really horrible feeling. And I was feeling that way, and I just said to myself, do something soothing. So I popped the headphones on, I pressed record, and I played the piano for 2 hours. And within that 2 hours, I got a 43-minute album. That's how that happened.
But what the thing is, and it makes sense now when I listen to it. So I'm listening to it on when I'm cleaning, right? Because I listen to music when I'm cleaning. It's very, you can tune into it a bit better, I think, because you're doing stuff that's very, natural, I suppose. So what I loved about it is it sounds like it's an experimental piece. So it sounds like an experimental piece, but what I like about that is you don't know where it's going to go next, and that's the joy in that. It's like if you're listening to Bob Dylan, it's verse, chorus, verse. That's not putting Bob Dylan down, by the way. How dare I? But you know what I mean. It's that idea of popular music. It's the way it's written. But what I loved about that is the fact that it was taking turns and chances that maybe wouldn't have normally happened had you maybe sat down and said, I'm just going to write 5-minute piece of piano.
It would not have happened. And I very much what you're hearing on Nora Ephron Soul for the Sleepless is my thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
It's I would say it's not even in time. I didn't set up anything like any clicks or no click tracks or just nothing. It was just me trying to drift away somewhere, and that's what all the pieces are.
There's a song by Radiohead actually that now that you've mentioned that you love Radiohead, there's a song called Daydreaming that is quite it is in time, so I'm not saying it's not, but it's that kind of piano piece that's kind of slow and meditative that I think is amazing. And now thinking back to the listening to Nora Ephron, it's like the idea of, I don't know, there's something that links it now, which I didn't see before, if you know what I mean. So it's not like immediately I said, oh, this sounds like daydreaming, because it doesn't sound like daydreaming, but it's that idea of the kind of loop of beautiful sounding piano that there's a mystery to. I think there's a mystery to your work there. And
Thank you.
And that's what I mean. When I listen to that, and then I find Pockets of Change, which is a completely different kind of work from you, because it's, you hear your voice, I really like that you use the word syncopated in the lyrics. I don't know why that stood out. I just thought that's a pretty cool word to get into a lyric. Obviously that when you sit down to write something like that, that's a guitar driven piece first and foremost. Yeah.
Yeah. Or I'd sit down and I'd probably come up with some chords, usually is how it happens. And then I just start singing. I start singing until something gets comfortable.
Yeah.
And I always say, sometimes I just turn the voice notes on my phone and I just go at it. And out of maybe singing for a while, a hook will emerge and I'll grab it, and then I'll put something else with it, and it'll be one idea leading to the other. And then other times I just kind of sing for a while, and I tend to not forget the hook when it comes up. I tend to sort of lock it in. It's like, oh, there it is. And I won't forget it, and then I'll come back to it and write again. But yeah, that's a guitar-driven song. How it was written on the guitar was probably much different how it ended up. Because when I brought it to Terry at the time, he had he'd mandolins, he'd banjos, he'd bazookies, he'd 12-string guitars, 6-string guitars, bass guitars. There was just stringed instruments everywhere. And he just kind of sits there as well. And he's like, he just says, just play it. And as I play it, and then you might just say, oh, try this instead. Change the chord systems and things around. And that's very much what happened on that song. It wasn't as up-tempo when I wrote it myself. So yeah, when I brought it to Terry, he brought more arrangement to it.
When I first found it, I found it on YouTube, and then I went, grand, I'll put it on my my Apple Music, but it's not on Apple.
Was it not?
No, I couldn't find it.
Oh.
Should it be?
Well, yeah.
I'll try and find it.
No, but I see, I distribute through TuneCore. I don't know if you use TuneCore yourself.
No.
Usually it should go to all stores.
Let me look for it again. Like I spoke to you before, like I said to you before we start recording, I'm not very good with the old technology. So I might need John to find that for me. But I do want it, because obviously the Nora Ephron piece, I'm shortening that every time, and but
no, but I have to say, can I just say, I am delighted that you like those piano pieces.
Oh yeah.
I never considered myself to be a piano player. I would say I'm a composer, and I mean, you couldn't hand me sheet music and tell me to play. I'd be looking at you vacantly, kind of going, I can't.
I think Lou, Paul McCartney can't read music. So I every time I hear someone say that, I kind of, maybe that's what makes it so special and unique, is the fact that you're not being, your mind isn't set in a way that like a trained pianist are going to find exactly where to go next. So I think that's what I mean. Maybe that explains better what I mean about when I listen to it, that it did take those adventurous turns that I didn't expect. And then you're going, oh, we're going here now. And then we're going, and that could be why it is so unique. And look, I can't read sheet music, and I find my way around an instrument now and again, and it's fine. It's great. I do like, and that's what I wanted to actually mention, going back to that kind of idea of writing a song. And people will have asked me, how do you write a song? So now I don't have any songs out there, but when I sit down to write a song, it's like I'm writing a song now. It doesn't, like, I'm not like, cycling my bike and I go, okay, and start thinking of melodies. I really have to make an effort to pick up the guitar and put it in my lap and start. This is the verse chorus, like I was saying about slagging Bob Dylan off a minute ago. Verse chorus, and that is the way I write a song, And
well, that's fine.
Yeah, it is great, and people will go, well, I still don't understand, how you do it, but I think it's just like, I don't know if you find this with if you were talking about pockets of change now, for instance. So if you're something more structured, we'll call it in inverted commas, but when you sit down to write something, I'll either have a problem with my music or with my lyrics. I'll never have a problem with both. Sometimes I think, right, the lyrics are really good in this, but the music's terrible, or vice versa. Like, I find it hard to get into the natural. I think we spoke about this before we come on. Confidence, that kind of idea of being confident in what you've just written. Do you have that, like, with your music? As a I suppose as a given thing, really, that kind of inner confidence.
No.
Okay.
But I have to get to a point where I can say I'm happy with this.
Mm-hmm.
Because at that point, I will say about myself, if I feel happy with something, you can't tell me it's bad.
Okay.
Oh no, but you can tell me it's bad.
Yeah.
But you won't affect me, because I know I'm happy with it.
Mm-hmm.
If I have a seed of doubt in my head about it, and you tell me it's bad, I'm fucked.
Yeah.
The music is coming down off the internet. Everything has to be removed.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really need to be at a point where I know it's not bad, you know.
Yeah. And I wanted to bring this up while we were recording because we did have a little bit of a chat about it, and you mentioned about me talking about my lack of confidence in performing. And for this, people who've listened to the podcast all the time will know what I was talking about a couple of weeks ago about someone telling me I couldn't sing, and then me taking it on board for 10 years.
That's really,
And still,
really, really horrible. Like, what?
well, yeah, and you did say before, you did say like you don't know what drives people, and a lot of people did send that to me after I released the podcast. What drives people to kind of come up to someone and say that? I don't know. Maybe she thought she was being helpful. I'm not really sure, and I
So
think
you were playing at a gig, and a
yeah,
woman walked up to you and said, "It's bad.
yeah,
It's not."
you can't really sing like so. It, in the middle, I'm sure it was in the middle of a song as well. Like I think my brother was playing with me, and I think he was playing a little bit of a solo or something. I might be making that bit up, but it was definitely during the gig she walked up. I don't know if it was in the middle of the song, but it's about like, and I've spoken to you about this. It's about getting back. Like I was trying to get back into it now by playing, just putting them up on Instagram, and sometimes we'll put up, don't like this, wasn't great, blah, blah, blah. It's almost like a defense mechanism to kind of, before people say it's not great, I decide to do it. And the reason I wanted to bring it up with you again was because when I watch you perform on Instagram, on the piano, you strike me as someone who is very confident within themselves when they're playing. And is that a true reflection? Because we can all act, I suppose,
Oh, I'd say it's acting for me.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
no, I wouldn't be confident at all. Like, I have had struggles with my mental health that include performance anxiety.
Yeah.
And it includes a lot of social anxiety. Sometimes I cannot leave the house.
Mm-hmm.
I would play a lot more. I would do a lot more gigs if I wasn't terrified of lights. I played last year, and probably Terry would tell you the same because I think he was wondering what on earth is wrong with her. We played a gig together in Glore, and I had told the lighting engineer exactly the situation. And when I came out, the lights were brighter than discussed or whatever. And it's not, I'm not blaming anyone. It's how's anyone to know that something as small as that would have an effect on me? Just like going back to my confirmation, like I told you, when I stood on the stage and my whole body shook and I couldn't sing, a similar thing was starting to come over me. And I was standing at the mic, and I had to turn my back to the audience and walk to the back wall and just look at it for a few minutes, and then come back up and say, "Can you turn the lights down, please?"
Mm-hmm.
And I found it so difficult. I found it so difficult that I haven't really performed since.
Really?
So I'm trying to get myself back to a place where all of this mental stuff isn't affecting me so much, because it is affecting me. It
Yeah.
affected me for years.
Do,
So yeah, that's where I suppose say I'm not confident, but I think I have a sort of when it comes to putting material online and things like that, I think maybe it's more comfortable because I am alone in the room.
yeah.
And I'm doing it myself. I have control over the lights. I have control over my camera. And I think that's why it probably seems like I'm confident, maybe. I don't know.
But do you then think that when you are in control of the lights and in control of the camera, do you think that's your true self then when you're performing?
No.
Right.
This morning, for the first time, do you know what? You mentioned Sinead O'Connor earlier and what she means to me. And actually, her death triggered me in a good way. And it's a very strange thing to say because I'm obviously devastated. The whole world is devastated. horrible. I wish it hadn't happened. But because we have similar mental health struggles, I think I saw her as being a person who's faced with her mortality a lot as well, like I have been, and she died, and I'm still alive. And I thought, just something came back to me about my music or something. I can't explain it, but I was even singing this morning, and I felt like I'm singing like me again. I haven't been able to do this in years. So that's the effect that it's after having on me. Because I attempted suicide. And I have that past. So yeah, probably shouldn't talk about it.
No, you don't have to talk about it. Of course you don't. But I just
but yeah, I don't know. It's just it's had an effect on me. I know we don't know if she did it that way.
No, I know. Yeah.
But just all the struggles that she's had with it, and it's important to live, while you're alive.
It is,
not be living in fear and with fear of everything, and to not be consumed by mental illness. And there are ways of overcoming it. And it was really sad to watch at times her social media in the past couple of years, which I have been watching. She was changing her Twitter account quite regularly and changing her name and just crying for help. And especially after her son passed away, just it took her with it. He took her with him when that happened, I think. And also what was really horrible to watch was how people reacted to her. This person, this human being with a mental illness, and who's crying for help on the internet, and people were mocking her and just saying cruel, nasty things, anonymously behind their bloody keyboards, whatever. Too, and then you had a lot of people who were trying to help. I think at one point she wasn't able to leave the house, and I reached out to her myself. I looked up the social welfare, because she was wondering how she can get food if she can't leave the house. So I had looked up the social welfare and told her, give her the details to contact, because they can deliver food to the house or those kinds of things. And yeah, it was just horrible to watch her fall apart again so publicly,
I think it's very difficult to see it happening when you've experienced similar things. And I was diagnosed with bipolar a few years ago, and when this is when I talked about Sinead O'Connor last year with Dave Randall, the guitarist, and she had put out some videos, and you could obviously, she was clearly suffering with mental health. And it's very difficult when you hear, and I've definitely heard the people kind of mocking her because of that, like as if the phrases that people use, loony or weirdo, and all that kind of stuff. And she'd been hearing that her whole life. She'd been hearing that before anybody knew about anything to do with mental health. And just because she was a strong woman with a voice, and who stood up to people, and shaved her head because she wanted to shave her head, not because everybody else told she's, oh, you're so pretty, why'd you shave her head, that kind of stuff. And I just think, like, when you talk about the sad news that happened, but it clicking something in you, I can't help but feel, and I don't know this obviously, but someone like Sinead O'Connor, who influenced us all, in certain ways and in different ways, to see this happen to you, to have that reaction, to be devastated by the news, but then almost to be clicked into gear about music, and to be thinking maybe differently about how you're going to go forward. that's a pretty remarkable thing that someone can do for you, you know, in
Oh
a sad
yeah.
situation.
Yeah, and it's really difficult. It's really hard to explain it. I have no
Mhm.
explanation for it.
And that's all right too, though. It's just that the actual result is a good thing, you know. And no, it's like you're the Nora Ephron piece. Like you mightn't have an explanation for it, but the result is pretty exceptional. So it's fine. It doesn't, you know, we don't need that. Sometimes we don't need the full explanation of a journey. You know, just the idea of when we get there. It's there. I had this question written down. I'm only after spotting it. It's funny to have a conversation with you, Lou. I've just haven't really gone over the questions. It's been kind of just a rolling conversation, which is better, I think.
Yeah.
I have a question here for you that this is going to sound silly now, as what we were after talking about, but like, how would you describe your music?
You know, I think a lot of the time, no matter what genre I bounce into, it always ends up being dark and
Mhm.
haunting and kind of gothic.
Yeah.
I think it's just a style thing. It's where I go back to. Um, you know, it can be dramatic. But I think for my music, everything that you hear from me is coming from a raw and very real place in
Mhm.
my character. In that music for me, and especially my music, and when I sing, um, it's it's locked into my emotions. It's more than a limb. It's an organ. It's a brain and it's a heart. Um, I can't function well when I'm not musical.
Mhm.
And I would say, you know, if you everything that you listen to by me is very much a descriptive of my maybe what's going on with me emotionally, or what's going on in my life. You know, it's just such a part of me. And then even but then even at that, lyrically, if you look at Wide Eyed Lady or any of those, they're fiction, they're
Mhm.
fantasy. Um, but there's always elements of something real in them as well.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to be that open in your music. You know, people don't tend to take apart your lyrics and go, "This is exactly how she's feeling now," you know. But you know, we kind of tend to like I suppose I do it on this podcast all the time, so people don't even bother me about it anymore. But I tend to kind of put my stuff out there, like you know, in these conversations, and like you're doing now, like it's and but when we do it in lyrics or in the music or the way the music can sound, I think we can kind of get away with that without people kind of going, what's like, is this person okay? You know, it's that kind of the
Yeah.
idea. And does like creating and being, you know, musical, and you said you can't function without music, so I'm guessing it does, but it, how does it, you know, help with your mental health, do you think?
Um, I think Nora Ephron is a good example of how it
Mhm.
helps with my mental health. I mean, my anxiety was so high, I was uncomfortable. You know, my body felt really horrible to be in. And when I started playing it, soothed me, it calmed me down. And another thing that really helps me with my mental health, and it keeps me away from medication, because um really I was on medication for a long time, and I just felt, you know, this is every day of my life, this medication. It's a dopamine receptor, and it's a serotonin reuptake inhibitor every day of my life. And I'm not sick every day of my life. You know, this comes over me every once in a while. And I need to feel, you know, I'm an artist. I need to feel the world around me. I need to feel like me. You know, I need to feel sad.
Mm-hmm.
I need to feel happy and elated. I need these things. I need to feel in love. You know, um, I need to feel turned on. I need there's things like my body, my mind needs things,
Mm-hmm.
and on those medications, I was not feeling any of these things. It was impossible to be an artist. Um, And so I figured, that's bouncing back to what I had said earlier about these chemicals and things, is that if I can do to myself what the medication does in a way, then perhaps I can help myself in moments of despair. And I developed routines, practice. I exercise every day. I could do up to 10K. I'll either run it or I'll walk it. Sometimes I'll do more if my anxiety is very high. I'll play music. I'll practice positive talking to myself. This kind of, I can, I will, I'm able, which I've had to do actually all through. I'm developing and composing quartet material that's actually video game music.
Yeah.
And I had to do this all the way through because of doubt. So mantras, manifesting, and all of this has worked for me. I haven't really had like an overwhelming problem with my mental health. These practices have, and managing it, have saved my life, and have saved my music, and have put me on a path to a better future. And it's things like little things that you can actually do for yourself.
Yeah.
It's like that.
Yeah. I always speak to my friend about the idea that people approach it now, maybe people younger than me, but people approach life as if they always have to be the best and the greatest. And, you can't just be good, or, the goals have to be up here. With your music, what do you think your goal is with your music and what you're trying to do with it?
What it is now is I just want to live a musical life. And I want to, when I feel like doing the quartet material and video game music, there's piano stuff, calm, there's folk songs, there's everything kind of coming out of me. And I'm just going to let it, and I'm going to see what the world says. I'm going to send it out, see if I can get reviews, and see if I can collaborate with people, and just live it.
Yeah.
And I'd love to be able to make a living just doing that. My friend Sean is a ghostwriter and arranger. I've met a lot of people in recent times that do really interesting things with music.
Yeah.
And I would say, media music is probably where I really want to be working.
Okay.
Music for video games, music for TV and film. I love that. I love putting music to a story, and writing underscore and themes, leitmotifs for characters, and I really want to do that. I'm fortunate that I do reports for a really cool show called Culture File, where I get to talk to a lot of artists and celebrate their music and edit. And sometimes where it's not about music, there was one instance where I did a report about artificial intelligence, and it was about an internet cryptid called Lobe.
Right.
And of course she didn't have her own music, so I just had to develop music for her to put on the podcast. So that was fun. I did that, a piano underscore. So yeah, I've been doing bits and pieces like that, which I love to do as well.
Yeah, I read it. I was going to actually ask you as the writer, I suppose, side of you. How did that come about? That's something you applied for, obviously.
Doing the things for Culture File?
Yeah.
I don't really know. I had moved to Dublin. I had sent my music through. I entered a river into a competition.
Okay, right.
With the Irish Daily Mail and The Apprentice. They were looking for songs to package as part of a task for the show.
Oh, okay.
So the contestants had to pick 10 songs, package them, put them on a CD, put together press releases, promote them, and distribute them nationally with the Irish Daily Mail newspaper. And they picked my song.
Ah.
And through that happened. And then I was doing a Venue One, which was the very first ever online venue in Ireland. And it was in Pravdas in Dublin. And it didn't work. And it was Dave Fanning and Frank Murray, who sadly has passed away since. It was their brainchild, and it was called Venue One, and it was all cameras. It was an online sort of live music venue. And it didn't take off. The venue didn't take off. The gig was great. The gig was packed, and interviewed by Dave Fanning, and it was class, great experience. And Dave Fanning then played my music on my show. On his show, my friend Mark happened to be in Dublin as well, and he was doing these reports, or editing the audio for the reports. And I guess I met Luke, and it just kind of happened that I ended up doing this. Honestly, sometimes one thing leads to another.
Well, I think what helps you is that you will, you've got your kind of each toe in different waters. You try things out. You're not just a folk singer. You're also a composer. You're also a writer. And all of these things together combine and probably help each other in ways, the push and pull of it all. I do want to ask you this difficult question. This is probably the hardest question I've asked yet. And everybody hates when I ask these kind of questions, but I like to ask this question, right? What is the best song ever written?
Oh, wow.
Everybody...
Yeah, see, that's really hard because there are many.
There are many, but I want the best. I want everybody knows mine is A Day in the Life by the Beatles for me the greatest song ever written. And I've had these quiz things on here, Lou. So I've had like 3 or 4 people on, on the screen with me, and I've asked them, and I've had some very surprising answers, and some genuinely surprising in a good way and then surprising in a bad way. But I don't tend to judge people on it. I'm doing this to stall so you have time to think. So this is just me filling in the time. This is I've done this before. But I think it is a hard question. I make lists all the time. Films, songs, albums. And I know my top 3 songs. Okay, I'll tell you what. I know you didn't ask, but I'm going to tell you. A Day in the Life, Karma Police, and How Soon Is Now by the Smiths. They're my 3 favorite songs. They haven't really moved for a very long time, and probably will never will. Did I stall enough for you to give an answer?
You know what? As soon as you asked me, the first song that came to my head was Lou Reed, Perfect Day.
Oh, that is amazing.
I have loved that song forever. Now, do I think it's the best song ever written? It's definitely up there. But that's my opinion.
Look, I can't argue with something as good as that. I mean, the first time I heard Perfect Day, maybe like a lot of people, was when they did it for the BBC, and they had like so many people doing it. And then I went back to listen to the Lou Reed one, and it's so different, obviously, because Lou Reed's voice is obviously so different, but it's a very special song on a very special album, and it's a very good shout, Lou.
Yeah, it's very feel good. I like the tempo of it, the movement. Such a perfect day.
Yeah, that melody, and David Bowie's on the piano in the background as well.
Yeah.
So
the combination of voices that they did that time for. What was that for?
Was it for the anniversary for the BBC or something? But the 50, I can't really remember. Or no, it wasn't. It was for Children in Need, or it was one of those.
Something like that. Yeah, it was something like that.
Yeah, because isn't I know Bowie produced that album, Transformer album, and he played on the original, and then he was in the original. Was Lou Reed in that video? He was, wasn't he?
He would have been, I'd say.
Yeah, because he, of course, sure, he only passed away recently enough, so he definitely he must have been. But anyway, it is a great song. If people don't know Perfect Day, go and listen to it because it's ideal. Where can people get your music? We think we discussed it already, really.
I've put it everywhere I can. It's on YouTube. It's on Spotify now. Not all of it is on Spotify, actually. I have to put some of it. There's some of it on Bandcamp, SoundCloud.
Apple Music,
It should be on Apple Music, but I have to check that out because.
Well, it's just that song, by the way. It's all the other stuff is there. That's why that's why I listen to it. So it is just Pockets of Change that wasn't there. So for whatever reason,
I'll have to check that out. Maybe because there were some of them. I mostly distributed through TuneCore that do deliver to Apple Music.
Yeah, it's strange.
I think maybe Pockets of Change went out with DistroKid. That might be where the problem is arising. I'll have to look it up.
That's all right. Another question we always ask. I know we've talked a bit about exercise, but what do you like to do in your spare time?
I need to just stay busy, but I love movies. I love horror movies. I love
Me too.
All those. Yeah, I love them. I was saying recently, I would go to the cinema, and I do go to the cinema to see horror movies alone. I went to see Evil Dead Rise alone recently, and I was like checking under my seat. It's good. It did the trick. It's scary.
There's a lot of blood in that film.
There is, especially when he's going through the whatever that is, the composter and grinder thing.
And the elevator scene as well. They're in the elevator.
Yeah. And just ropes like bondage. Yeah.
Lot of blood.
Lots of blood. But yeah, I wouldn't be going to the Barbie movie alone. Like it's like I haven't seen that yet.
No, neither have I. But I want to.
Go to the cinema. Sorry.
Yeah. I want to see Barbie, but I wouldn't go alone either. But I'm with you. I do absolutely love horror films. I love all films, and I collect them, and I've got loads of them, and so I'm never bored. There's always something there to watch. I spoke about cinemas in particular, like are difficult for me. I had a massive panic attack back when I was watching Phone Booth with Colin Farrell. That's how long ago that was. But I was really hungover at the time as well, so that didn't help the situation. I gave up drinks, but ever since then, I've really struggled with the cinema. I don't like it. Has to be something really, really kind of important director that I like, or actor or whatever, and it has to be a decent time, because I'd love to see Oppenheimer, but it's 3 hours, and the cinema for 3 hours for me is a long time. I'm quite tall. Yeah. Seats are not my friend, but I do love going to the cinema on my own.
Me too.
Yeah, it's something very. I remember going. Well, I've seen a number of them, but I remember going to see Gone Girl a few years ago, and it was such a great experience, just because there was no one really else in the cinema. Look, it had been out a couple of weeks. You just get your seat. You can sit sideways, so you can stretch your legs out a little bit this way. But there's something really nice, and most people have a problem with it. They won't be, seen dead going to the cinema on their own, which is a kind of a shame. You should try it.
I find that really baffling as well. Yeah, what is it? It's the feeling of being ashamed of doing things alone.
Do you think it's
about what people think of you, isn't it?
It absolutely is. Yeah. Do you think, though, Lou, do you think it's to do with cinemas are normally seen as places of dating or couples going to the cinema, and people going on their own think other people will think I'm sad because I'm going on my own. I don't have a date. I've always had that in my head, and it's silly if it is. It might be for some people,
It probably is. And this is another thing that always baffles me about the cinema and dating is, how do you get to know one another?
That's another. Yeah, that is true.
Let's just go and sit beside each other and look at a screen.
In silence.
It would need to be the third date or something.
Yeah. The first date is mad. First date for cinema for the first date is a bad decision.
Yeah, I think
you know.
it is. Yeah.
But also, so obviously something you like to do is cinema. Obviously, the great thing about what you do is in your spare time, you're going to be creating music as well. That's a pretty cool kind of byproduct of it.
Yeah, no, I don't really do downtime very well, so I do create music and do all the day long. Yeah.
This is cool. Um, Lou, we've told people where to go and listen to music. I think I've hopefully put across how great I think you are as a musician and how talented you are. And I want to thank you as well because I know when people come on here and open up about stuff, it is difficult to do. And I always appreciate people when they're being as honest as you are. So thank you very much for that.
Oh no, thank you. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk. I
Of
feel
course.
like a lot of the time people are afraid to talk about mental health and things. They're afraid of how it would be perceived, what people would think about it and think about you.
Yeah.
But I think the more people that talk about it and be open about it, I mean, especially people of influence who are in positions who can influence, they say, because when you realize that somebody who appears to be hugely successful, I'm not saying that that's me, I'm not talking about me. We're talking about people who are influential and things like that. Um, when they can say, you know, I'm struggling with my mental health, I think it opens up the floor for other people to come forward and talk about it, especially men. You
Yeah.
know, I think men find it probably more difficult than women
Definitely.
to say that they're hurting mentally. Yeah.
100%. And
Yeah.
but like you said, the more people who talk about it, and the more people who maybe are listened to, have bigger audiences, and are influential in certain fields, and they do talk about it, I think it just becomes kind of like it is like a normal thing and a reaction to the world around us.
I think so. I think it's more normal than anyone knows or expects. I think everybody, even I'd say even the people who judge others
Hmm.
and who say who stigmatize it. I don't think they could come forward and say they've never had an instance of
Yeah.
poor mental health. It's not possible. The world is really hard to live in
Yeah.
sometimes. You
I,
know, it's fast paced and it's competitive and it's so many things. It's not possible to be okay all the time.
mhm. It's true.
And I think that people are getting lost in that then, and especially men, where they're like, "Oh God, I am not okay." You know, maybe I don't. They feel like I don't have a full-time job. I don't feel like I'm functioning well.
Yeah.
And then it starts to get in and on top of them, and maybe if the world was just a little bit kinder to people being able to say I'm not okay, the mental illness wouldn't grow. You
Mm,
know, it wouldn't develop into like levels of catastrophe that it does for some people. You know,
absolutely.
we
Yeah.
learn more basic ways of managing it when it starts.
Exactly. Well said, Lou. And listen, thank you once again. Thank you so much. Don't go anywhere. We have to get a photo together when I close this out.
Okay.
It's in the contract. I haven't sent you the contract, but it's in there. All right. So let me just close this out. So I want to say thank you very much to John for all his help with all the stuff that I can't do. I always thank my mum, my dad, my granddad, Jaron Calvin for the music and the logo. I nearly said lyrics. To the music and the brain. We're on YouTube. Subscribe if you would. We're on Instagram. Actually, Lou, what's your Instagram account?
It's Lou McMahon music, I think.
Go over there and subscribe. We're also on Facebook and still on Twitter, just about. Spotify, Apple Anchor, Google Podcasts, all the usual places. Obviously, thank you very much for joining us and for listening and for sticking with us. And Lou, once again, thank you so much.
No, thank you. Honestly, it's been lovely.
You're more than welcome. Everyone else, we'll see you.